Hi, everybody. Someone asked me to share my haunting experience living in a red house and a yellow house. So I will be sharing them. So let's start with the red house. Back in 1988, my family and I we migrated from Thailand here as a refugee to the state of Minnesota. My aunt and my uncle, who is my mom's sister and brother in law, were our sponsor. So when we came straight to Minnesota. After a month or two living with my aunt and my uncle, we were able to finally find a house, and so it was an apartment. And then we moved into this apartment. At that time, these apartments they were like the side by side apartments, and they all had like a shared basement. Okay, so keep that in mind. Each of these units they were like side by side, but they're also um, how do you say it? Like there's probably like five, like maybe three or four units, but they're also on the other side there's also three or four units there too. And so like all around it it's just like apartments, right? And so like I believe we lived on the opposite side. So we lived on the opposite side of like the neighbor that we went to. So one evening, my parents decided that they were gonna go to the neighbor's house because they were doing something. They were hosting some sort of party or hooply thing or like a spirit calling thing or something like that. I just remember there was a lot of people there and we were there. And my parents they came home. It was late, and so they came home and I wanted to stay behind because I wanted to hang out with the kids there. And so I told my parents that when I come home, I'll just come home through the basement because if I was to go back outside, I would literally have to go out of the door, go all the way around the building, and then go to my house. And so I said that it was just easier if I just took a shortcut on the base through the basement. So that's what I ended up doing. Um, but I've always known that the house was very haunted because that apartment complex was very haunted because we had like some supernatural events that sort of happened in that house. And so I'll get to those in a bit. But as as the evening went and everybody was leaving, I had to leave. I decided that I had to leave too. And so then I told the neighbor and I said, hey, I'm going to go down the basement. I'm going to go home. And so I think the mom or the dad, I can't remember. One of them said, okay, and they opened the door for me. Then I started going down and then all of a sudden they just closed the door, right? So the light was on, but here I am alone in the basement. Like my hair started to rise, right? Because I felt like everything, it just felt so eerie. And so then my hair started to rise. And then I just remember, I remember just looking like, fuck, I have to like run from this stair, all the way down to the base to the basement and then go up our stairs, to get to my apartment. And so then I remember when I did that, I just booked it because I literally felt like because they're like the staircase, right? They were open. They weren't like the closed staircase, so they were open. So I was so scared that someone with something was gonna grab my feet as I was like walking down those stairs. And so I remember when I went down, I just ran as fast as I could, and I didn't want to look anywhere. Like I remember I was just trying to keep my eyes straight, and I did not want to like look anywhere else. And then as I was going up the stairs to my apartment, to my parents in our apartment, I felt something chasing me. And so as I was running, I was also scared that something was going to grab my feet as I was climbing up the stairs. And I was also scared that somebody else was going to come, a spirit or whatever it was going to grab me from behind. So I remember just panicking in full blown mode. And I was so like, I was so terrified. I just remember that. And I remember right when I got up to the stairs, I was pounding really hard and really fast. And I was hoping my parents would just like hurry up and get the door open before the monster would get me. And the moment they opened it, I felt in silent relief. And I just remember taking a deep breath and saying, oh, I told my parents, I was like, Mom, I thought that monster was going to get me. And my mom was like, oh, there's nothing, like, how parents are. They don't want you to be scared. But my parents have experienced like other supernatural stuff that happened in our particular complex, in our apartment. So one day I think my mom took my brother and sister to school, because I remember this time I was still very young. I wasn't even of kindergarten age yet, so I didn't go to school yet. So I was probably 4, and then my younger sister, she's like 2 years older. She's like 2 years younger than me, so she's probably 2. And so my dad, my sister, and I, we were sitting in the kitchen. No, not in the kitchen. We were sitting in the living room, and to our kitchen, there's a swing door. Okay, so when we were sitting in the kitchen, sorry, we were sitting in the living room, and we were watching TV. And then all of a sudden, we heard a chopping noise, right? Like someone was chopping meat, on a logyang, what we call like a cutting board, right? But back then, my parents, we didn't use like the flat surface cutting board. My parents would use like those big wood blocks, and they'll call it a cutting board. Hmong people, we use those. And so, and then we only have like Hmong knives, right? So we don't have like, the American knives, like how we do now. So I remember just hearing someone chopping meat, like as if, when you cook and you're chopping, you're using a heavy, you're heavily chopping the meat, and when it cluck, 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 right, onto the cutting board. And so my dad heard it too. I remember, because I kind of looked at my dad, and then he just kind of like looked at me, and then he nonchalant went into the kitchen, and because like we have to go through that swing door, right? And so my dad nonchalantly went to the kitchen to pretend that he was gonna go grab something, but then when he went in there was nobody there. And so then my dad came back, and then I asked my dad, was someone in the kitchen? My dad was like, no one's in the kitchen. I'm like, Dad, but did you hear someone chopping meat? And he goes, what are you talking about? Because I know my dad was doing that because he didn't want me to be scared. Okay. So that was one experience that I had with my dad. I had another experience with my mom. So, and talking about this, I'm starting to get goosebumps. Like I said, it's here. Oh, okay. So, one evening I didn't finish my meal. Okay. And so that evening, as we were going to bed, I got hungry. So I told my mom, I was like, Mom, I'm really hungry. Can we go back downstairs and eat? And so my mom's like, there's still some rice left, and there's some bananas, but there's nothing else to eat. And I'm like, but I'm really hungry. I just want something in my stomach. And so I just remember telling my mom, I was like, Mom, I'm hungry, And so my mom was like, okay, fine. But it was just going to be me and my mom going downstairs. So my mom didn't want to go downstairs alone with me. And so my mom ended up waking up my younger sister. And she didn't wake up my 2 older siblings, probably because they were going to school the next day. So she woke up my younger sibling. And I remember my sister. And I remember the 3 of us, we went downstairs, right? And as we started walking downstairs, we can hear footsteps running back upstairs. Like, dum, 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 right? And so we were like, I kind of looked at my mom, and I was kind of like, Mom, do you hear that? And then my mom was just like, Joshua, she was like, hurry, let's go down, And so I was like, we went to the kitchen. She gave me some rice with water, and I ate it with some bananas, right? And then after that, we put the dishes in the sink, and then we were going back upstairs, and then we can hear the steps go, dum, 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 dum. Like right when we got to the middle of the stairs, that's when the thumping noise came, and it went dum, 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 right back downstairs. And so my mom was like, hurry up. And so my mom pushed me, and then me and my sister up, and then we ran, like literally we ran to the room. And that was one of the experience that I had with my mom. And then I also remember one afternoon, my parents wanted to take pictures, right? They wanted to dress in Hmong clothes, and they wanted to go take pictures. And so they all did that. And then I remember standing outside and looking up, because the bedrooms are upstairs. I remember seeing someone standing at the window, staring down. And oh my God, like, goosebumps. So I remember someone staring down, and I kind of just looked, I didn't say anything, but I just kind of looked, and I ignored it, and then it just went, and then it ended up going away. But that was our experience with the red house. Okay. The yellow house, this is when we moved to California, and we ended up living in Merced. So we lived in this house for a really long time. My parents ended up liking that house because it had like it was only, I think it's 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom. We could make the back room a bedroom if we wanted to, but it was really just 2 bedroom. So but we lived in the house for a really long time. And then one evening, my dad and my uncle, they decided that they were going to share stories from back in Laos. And so they were talking about all these ghost stories, and I just remember being so intrigued, and I was so tuned into their stories, and I just remember having goosebumps, and I was so scared, of hearing their stories because it was so haunting. And then all of a sudden, the back door, it was like the furthest door, from the living room. It just swung open in the middle of the night. And oh, I was so scared. And it wasn't like a, it was like a, and it was like, and then like my uncle, my dad, and myself, we were just staring at the door. And my dad goes, "Go close it." I looked at my dad and I'm like, "Oh, I ain't gonna go close it," like I was so terrified. And so my dad was like, "Go close it." And then my uncle was like, "No, don't make her go close it," because she was listening to our stories. So I'm pretty sure she was really scared. And with that door open like that, like I know they knew that somebody opened that door, because there was nobody, that door would not have opened. It was locked, so there was no way that door was flung open. But my dad ended up going to close the door. So that was one incident, right? And then the next incident that happened in that house that I remember that creeped that living heck out of me was one morning I woke up, and it was like a weekend, and I woke up and I freshened up, and then I came to the kitchen. My mom was ready to starting breakfast, and she was steaming the rice and starting to cook, like the entrees and stuff like that. And then my mom looked at me, and my mom goes, "Hey, why'd you wake up and go sit at the couch in front of the bedroom?" I go, "What?" Because in that house, we put a couch, against the wall, but the couch was facing my parents' front, not front door, but my parents' bedroom door. Okay. So then my mom goes, "Yeah, didn't you wake up this morning and sat on the couch?" I go, "No." And then my mom goes, "Are you lying?" And I'm like, "No." And then I started looking like I was terrified, right? I'm like, "Mom, why are you saying this to me?" And so she knew I was getting scared, so she didn't say anything else. But then the curious me, I had to keep asking my mom, and so my mom finally told me. She said, "So this morning your dad got up, and as he was going to use the restroom, he thought he saw you sitting on the couch. You didn't say anything to him, but you were sitting on the couch and facing the door. So your dad looked at you, and your dad said, 'Hey, since you're up, go freshen up, and go wash your face, brush your hair, brush your teeth, and go start on breakfast. Go start on steaming the rice.' Given I was only like 7 or 8 at this time, but I already knew how to cook. And so um after my dad said that, I didn't answer my dad, right? My dad was like, because my dad thought that was me, so I didn't answer my dad. And then he went to the bathroom. He got freshened up. He washed his face, did all the stuff he needed to do. He came out of the bathroom, and then he went to the living room to look for me again, but I was nowhere in sight, right? And so he got scared, and so he was kind of like, "What the heck?" And so he went to look for me in the bed in my bedroom, and then I was still sleeping. And so my dad didn't do anything, right? Because it wasn't like whatever that thing was, it wasn't like it talked to my dad. It just kind of sat there and like looked down. My mom was like, it didn't even look at my dad. It literally like sat there with its head down like this, and like it didn't even look at it didn't even look at my dad. And so then and then my dad goes, um when my dad went back to go look for me, to look for me, he couldn't find me, and so then he ended up going to the bedroom and to look for me, and so he ended up doing that, and then he knew that what he saw wasn't me, and so but then he told my mom, and so then my mom told me, and so that's why my mom asked me, and so I said it wasn't me, and then that's when they realized that it wasn't natural. And then a few more things happened after that, a lot more stuff that, like, happened after that. And I have so many haunting stories, but I will share with you guys next time, okay?